All guests on ZASLOW Show 2.0 brought to us by the official beer of the program. You know, that's Johnny Cuba, European roots with that Caribbean soul. We're talking a refreshing German lager in a can. Go pick up a six-pack of Johnny. Go to johnnycuba.us, use the Johnny locator, find the nearest location to you. And, of course, make sure you always drink responsibly. Don't forget Johnny Cuba's mantra, stay tranquilo. And joining us now, Mike Ryan, Meadowlark Media, Dan LeBatard Show, and newly part of CanesInsight. Mike, tell me what's going on with CanesInsight. What's going on? Good to see you.
Good to see you, Zaz. Happy football season. Always a joy joining the program. Thank you for the invite. Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, I had an incredible opportunity to join the CanesInsight team. For my money, CanesInsight, and I'm just speaking for me as a consumer of these things, and I sample all of the Miami Hurricanes content out there. For the last few years, CanesInsight has been my go-to. I really love the team over there, and I got an opportunity to buy into CanesInsight, and now I'm contributing weekly to some of their content. We have a huge activation this week, a nice little mini marathon that you've so graciously agreed to be a part of, and we have our huge preseason hype pod. That's always a big deal for Canes fans and D Money, and we're going to get you locked in for the upcoming season, and our content's only going to get stronger and stronger as the season goes on.
Yeah, so tell me what's going on tonight. I'm going to hang out with you guys for a little bit tonight. So tell me what's happening now. I'm not a Canes expert. You know, I root for the Canes, of course. Am I going to be treated like the enemy also because I went to the University of Florida? Because I've told you guys, I'm a great Hurricanes. I'm the best kind of Hurricanes fan that I went to UF, and I still root for the Canes. I'm an amazing Canes fan.
I thought you went to Santa Fe, not
No. It's really insulting that you say that. I went to the University of Florida. I have a degree from the University of Florida.
I'll look into that. I always thought it was Santa Fe. But yeah, your bona fides when it comes to Hurricane fandom, you don't have to question it to me. Look, if going to the University of Miami was a prerequisite, they'd get a hell of a lot less money from me on an annual basis. I actually have huge respect and admiration for people that actually went to other institutions but stayed true to their one true passion. The University of Miami is more of a communal thing. If you look at the student body, it doesn't reflect the fan base of the University of Miami, at least not the ones that I see in the parking lot. So this is a much bigger thing than just an academic institution. Though it's a great academic institution, no knocks there. The way that this city rallied around this program in the 1980s has been well documented in documentaries that I boned up on this week. But this was born out of a us versus them thing. And I think the only thing that locally that kind of came even close to what that felt like and what it will feel like if Miami is ever back again was the Miami Heat of the Big Three, where it felt like an entire nation, an entire world was against you and didn't want to see you succeed. And for that reason, I think Miami has an especially strong bond to the University of Miami football program.
So 5 p.m. tonight, right? YouTube.com, CanesInsight, and you guys are going to be hanging out for what, like 5 hours we're talking about here?
5-hour mini marathon there. I guess 5 hours, it's not a mini marathon. That's a real marathon. I think
it's just 5 hours. That's all it is. It's 5 hours.
You clock out of work and you clock in with us. The idea is to get you out of work and into your nighttime at Bougainvilleas or wherever you're going to be hyping yourself up for Florida this week. And we want to be with you and hyping you up. We got huge marquee guests. You're the biggest name on that marquee, Jonathan ZASLOW. A lot of our colleagues, Jorge Sedano, Kevin Clark from Omaha and ESPN, Chris Felica, John Beeson, who played Florida 3 times, never lost to them, Brian Monroe, a great friend of mine. So we got a special message coming from Danny Boy Kane, which should get the fan base riled up. So we got a lot of special things planned. And this is all a big activation to formally kick off my partnership with CanesInsight and get people excited for what I think is the most pivotal Miami Hurricanes football season, arguably ever.
All right, so let's get into a little bit of that here. Is this game, because I'm going to be there this weekend. You know, you're certainly going to be there this weekend. ESPN, I'm doing ESPN College Tailgate every week now. It's a new show that we debuted this past week, and it was not in the budget to send us to Ireland but we are traveling every single week, beginning with this weekend. And so luckily for me, week 1, we're in Gainesville. We're doing the show right there by the stadium for Canes and Gators. So it's awesome. I'm going to be there. I've only been back to the school a couple of times since I graduated. So I'm really excited to be there this weekend. Is a win for the Hurricanes bigger than a loss for the Gators?
Yes. And I think I wear my bias on my sleeve. By the way, I had the pleasure of going to a UMUF game with you, Jonathan Zaz.
That's right. That's the last game I was at, 2007, Canes and Gators. That piece of shit Urban Meyer kicking the field goal for the cover at the end.
Yeah, and a questionable call from SEC refs. They tried to tell us that they were ACC refs when we were there at the Swamp, and we looked at the newspaper the next morning and found out that controversial call. That was like a 9-3 game at the half or something like that. It's also kind of depressing that we refer to that as the Sean Spence game, because it's not like Miami played particularly well. He was the only guy that flashed. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. But I think that this game, it's huge for Miami in the sense that let's look at the Florida angle first. If Florida loses, they realize right off the bat that they're not better than Miami. And you look at their schedule ahead, and that's kind of all she wrote for the season.
It's like the toughest it might be the toughest in the country.
Yeah. So if I were a Gator fan, I'd probably make that argument. But here's why I'm going to make the pro Miami argument, in that this is a really difficult place to start the season. Regardless of what you think of the Florida Gators, I think the narrative's kind of gotten a little out of control with Billy Napier and the Florida Gators. They still, if you look at the composite talent ratings, that they're a very talented team. This is a very hostile environment. Kyle Whittingham had Utah humming, absolutely humming. And he went into the Swamp to open the season and lost to Florida. Now, Florida had a top 10 pick at quarterback, and he made incredible plays to win that game. But the atmosphere, in large part, won that game for Florida. And this is the first time this Miami Hurricanes unit, because there's a lot of new players, has really felt that kind of atmosphere. You have a couple of holdovers that were at College Station, but this is as rough and ready a Florida crowd as I anticipate all season long, because I kind of feel like they're going to be broken by the end of the year. So you're going to get their best shot here. But if the University of Miami can take that crowd out of the game early, it'll start turning on the Gators. And then let's say the University of Miami wins. You know that you're better than Florida. Look at that schedule. Zaz, it opens up quite nicely. I think that you can look at a lot of games between the Florida game, Virginia Tech game, Louisville game, Florida State game, obviously, ACC championship, and you try to figure out, is this a 10-win season? Is this an 11-win season? Is this a 9-win season? You anticipate that they're going to lose maybe 1 or 2 of that lot of games. Well, if they get a dub right out the gates, and depending on how they look, man, the schedule really lightens up, and a lot of your big games are at home. I think your toughest game, you have a pretty tough stretch where you're traveling a lot, and maybe that Louisville game, they're certainly talented, can be tricky. But if they win this game, I think the excitement is warranted, and you're going to get a lot of Canes are back talk. And for me, I'm not there yet. But with an expanded playoff field, with this being year 3 of Mario Cristobal's program, with the investment that they've gotten from boosters, the collective, and the administration alike, this is a monster game for the University of Miami. And I know Steve Spurrier called it the biggest Florida Gator game since 1988. I'd argue, make a sound argument, this is the biggest program in Miami's football program history. Make it athletics, because of all the things that I outlined. We need this thing to work. If you lose this game, all the questions about the staff are warranted. I know me as a booster, I'll start looking at, what have I done for the last few years? Is this worth it? A lot of people are going to be doing that. But if you win this game, Miami's a front run in town, and people like winners, especially in college athletics. I think you see donations to the collective go up. I think you see this program really starting to hit its stride, and you have a monster recruiter that is going to use that result in the state to the nth degree.
Where does the Miami Florida rivalry rank for you as far as
number one,
ahead of FSU? Like it's number one.
Number one with a bullet. I think Florida State and Miami, and social media has kind of warped this a little bit, but generally over time, that is a rivalry that is ultimately rooted in mutual respect. And
Right.
one of the ties that bind between those two programs is we hate Florida more. And it's not just the games, because Miami, in my adult life, we've only played them like a handful of times in my adult life, but it's their fan base. It's the fact that they don't want to play us and have been open on the record about not wanting to play us because they don't like the way that those results go. I hate the Florida Gators. From traveling there with you, did not have a nice time there. And don't get me wrong, I hate FSU too, but I legitimately despise this program. It's not even close. FSU is number 2 in the totem pole of hate, but it's a distant 2, followed by Notre Dame, I would guess, but nothing compares to the intense hatred that I have for Florida. I don't know if it works both ways, but man, we'll find out this weekend. And they're going to be feeling good because both teams don't have a 1 under that L column. So you're going to get as cocky a Canes fan base and as cocky a Gators fan base as you can possibly have. I love it, especially when these two teams match up week 1, because it's a season definer.
You know, we know with the new college football playoff that the ACC champion is going to get a top 4 seed and is going to get a first round bye. Do you think there is a scenario where the Canes make the playoff as an at large if they don't win the ACC?
I think that's largely dependent on the ACC. It's going to be an uphill battle, especially this year. Basically, you have Team Fox, which is the Big Ten, and you have Team ESPN, which is the SEC. And I know that they say there's a Power Four, and 4 conference champions are going to get a bye, but there's going to be 3 lost teams in the conversation for the CFP, and they're not going to be from the ACC, and they're not going to be from the Big 12. This is going to be basically a 2-conference sport, and if I had to bet money on it, I'd say only 1 team from the ACC goes. And I think that you'll see, and you'll be probably culpable in this, ESPN does a pretty good job of finessing the CFP with their daytime programming, and I think you'll see that. I think you'll see both Fox and ESPN, because of the investments they've made, carry water for these programs. Is it fair? Not necessarily. Can the ACC use some stronger leadership? For examples that I just laid out, 1,000%. No one's scared to piss off the ACC, as we saw last year with Florida State.
It's why I think, you know, for the Canes to make it as an at-large, they probably have to go to the ACC championship undefeated. And their only loss is in the ACC championship. I feel like that's the only route for them to make it as an at-large. But that leads me to the next question, where I think it's an interesting scenario with the college football player. There's a lot of fun stuff, you know, like that we're going to be wanting to see as the years go by, like who's going to be the first number 12, which you assume is a group of 5 champion, to upset a number 5 seed. Like, when will that eventually happen one day? And there's other fun stuff, like who will be the first team to win 4 playoff games instead of a bye and 3 that can win the national championship. There's a lot of fun stuff to look forward to. But I think
you can have a 16-0 college football team. That is a possibility, which if that happens, who's to argue, even though that they didn't have a first round bye, who's to argue that that's not the greatest college football team ever if you have a 16-0 college football team?
Yeah, and maybe the most exciting thing is on-campus playoff games, all right? Yeah. And I do wonder if there's going to be fan bases, maybe even the schools, who keep it quiet to themselves, where it's like, you know, first round bye would be obviously amazing, but campus playoff game, you know, never had that before. Like, do you think about what that would be like? How amazing it would be if the Canes, let's say they don't win the ACC championship, so they don't get a first round bye, but a playoff game at Hard Rock Stadium?
Yeah, well, I think that scenario is going to be tough, because if they're not a conference champion and an at-large CFP team, I don't really envision them getting a home draw in that. But I mean, you were there in 2017 when we beat Notre Dame, right? Were you there?
I was not. I was watching the game on a cruise.
Oh boy. Well, on that cruise, no matter how many hundreds of miles away you were, I'm sure you felt it pulsating through the screen, and you've heard firsthand accounts of people that were there. And I use this probably to the point that it's cliche, but when I was at ESPN and hanging around all those college game day folks, they told me that that atmosphere at Hard Rock Stadium was the second craziest atmosphere they had ever experienced behind Death Valley and LSU. That's high praise. And that's about tens and tens of thousands of more people in terms of stadium capacity. It's incredibly high praise. When this community has a program that they think legitimately has a shot, they will galvanize. And all the narratives that are out there about us being fans, some of them having merit, that's all fine and dandy. If the Canes are back playing important games, if their name is on the marquee, this town will turn up. We are front runners to a fault, but when it's going good, you don't want to be in our way. And I can only imagine having big-time college football games. Forget college football playoff. That's a little pie in the sky. I think that this is going to be a tough game at Florida. I'm not trying to get ahead of myself. And the more, it's funny, the more invested I am within the program, be it collective donations or being a booster for the program, the more I kind of tone it down, the more nervous I get, the more focused I get, because these are real consequences. And it's not just, I'm not just playing with emotions. There's real life stuff going on over here. And I think that Miami, before we can start talking CFP, and there's a lot of rat poison out there, they've got to win in a really difficult place. Kyle Whittingham has Mario Cristobal's number. He wasn't able to do it against Billy Napier. Mario Cristobal's going to have to find a way.
Lastly here, Mike Ryan. And again, make sure you watch tonight, youtube.com, CanesInsight Marathon, 5 p.m. I will be appearing in the latter parts of the program, but they got great guests all throughout the show. What's your setup for this weekend? What's the plan?
So setup, hopefully we get to run into one another. I'm going up with roughly 30-something Canes fans. A lot of Canes fans from across the country are coming.
What are you, just caravanning? Is that the deal?
I'm caravanning with about a dozen, and a couple dozen others are just making their way into Gainesville, and we're all going to link up. We've covertly found a venue that would allow us to rent it out. I'm not sure they know exactly what's happening there, but we've got a venue to ramp things up, and then we're going to go to like official Canes tailgates on Friday night. Maybe I'll look you up and we can hang out a little bit, Zaz, especially now that you're helping us out on this hurricane. I've been told on the internet that it has a lot of resemblance to the Starcade logo and the name. I'm just learning about these things. I wasn't familiar with either Starcade or the logo. While I would concede there is some kind of resemblance to those two things, I think you should probably point the finger at WWE, because we came up with this all on our own.
Right. They may be out of ideas. They're looking for, they're looking for ideas and creative from people like us. I could see that. Yeah. Mike, where are you sitting Saturday?
I'm lower bowl.
Cane sideline.
Yeah. That I know Miami had a real devil of a time. The administration had a real devil of a time prying tickets. They told me in private moments that this wasn't. They had never received such a small allotment from a school, and they really had to battle. Yeah. It looked like we were going to be stuck in the upper deck for quite a while. Thankfully, Florida came to its senses. We sold out our 4,000 ticket allotment. That's still kind of small considering the venue and the magnitude of the game, but this should be raucous. That I can say a lot of things about the Gators, a lot of nasty things, but when that place is humming and that place is excited, it is pretty intimidating and it is pretty special. I'm excited to take in, for the first time in my life, the Tom Petty tribute. So that should be fun. I'm a big Tom Petty guy, and hopefully I can do it with a crowd that's out of it, and I can just be enjoying myself.
Mike, excellent job. Looking forward to joining you guys tonight. I appreciate you hanging out with us here on the show today. Thank you, man.
Thank you very much. Subscribe, youtube.com/official CanesInsight. Thanks again for being a part of that tonight.